That's horrid, and that's really horrid if I'm 8, I promise you. They like people who find ways of encouraging them when things get difficult. We all know there's going to be things that get difficult, but finding easy ways to help me, perhaps like something else. Here's the problem to me, the top one. One of the reasons why we have to shout is what? Okay, let's try this. One of them is because a lot of the time the kids are a long way away from us. Because we are feeding the ball to them. So they are automatically down the other end. Right? So if you're one of these coaches, and there are a lot of them about, hopefully they're decreasing in number, who spend all their time feeding balls to kids, the only way they can communicate with them is to shout at them. Kids do not like being shouted at. Okay? We never smile, obviously. Here's another one they don't like, being told off in front of other people. In other words, this is about our behaviour, our coach behaviour. If there is a problem, do we shout at the kid? Do we do it in public, or do we take that kid quietly on one side, have a quiet word, and then give them a grin and kick up the pants and tell them to get back on there? Do we do that? Because if we do, that's fine. Who give punishments? This one drives me more mad than anything else I ever see. Here's a question for you. Coaches give punishments to kids. If those kids were adults, would they still give those punishments? The answer to that question, as far as I know, is no. You don't punish adults. Why the hell are you punishing kids? I don't understand it. We always tell them what they do wrong, who use their phones in lessons. And I saw it here in Norway last time I came. A coach who every time anybody picked the balls up, oh sorry, I thought it was in the pockets, always no idea what was going on. Kids know they're distracted, the coaches are not. I have a rule of thumb, we stay in a lot of hotels. You go into a hotel and you often check in, you're checking in and the phone rings. If that lady, if that receptionist lady picks up that phone and answers, I get mad. Because the person who's down the end of the line is not as important as the person who's standing in front of me. I need to deal with the person who's in front of me, not the person who's on the phone. I'm fighting a losing battle, but in my head, no coach should have a cell phone on call. It shouldn't be there, or it should be turned off or whatever. Okay. The other one I hate, and there's a derider to this one too, is when the coaches talk to parents and other coaches during their lesson. In other words, the coach is now distracted. My behaviour is that this is not the most important thing, what's going on in front of me, working with these children. It's about talking to other people. Perhaps I'm bored, I don't know. But I'll tell you something, you're going to be even more bored if you keep talking to people than actually if you concentrate on the people in front. And here's another one kids hate, and it's come out in talking with kids. When two adults, maybe the coach and the parent, talk about the child who's stuck between them. The kids hate that. They hate being talked about. Talk about them when they're not there, but don't talk about them so they're listening to every single thing. And we have it in the UK, there's a big talent and ID system, and that's the biggest moan from the 9 and 10-year-olds. The coaches and my parents talk about me when I'm standing there. Kids hate it. They also hate doing the same things every week, but the kick of that is they also like doing some favourite things. So sometimes you need to go back to the favourite things because that's what they want. Putting them in lines, I'm going to read you something. If you're putting them in lines, this means probably you're feeding the ball, so there's all sorts of other things. This is a quote from a kid. 10-year-olds will tell you, nothing good ever happens when you're standing still. In other words, if I'm in a line, well, I'm not necessarily standing still, I'm hoping I'm moving forwards maybe 3 feet every so often. But standing still in a line or standing in a line is not tennis. And anybody who's standing in a line needs to start looking at their coaching behaviour because it's really pretty awful. Right? There are thousands of ways of keeping kids going and every kid going. Try having kids feeding other kids, that helps a lot. That leads you to move around, it stops you shouting. And here's the other one. Coaches who do not behave in the same way every week. What kids love is that when they walk into somewhere, first of all they get a smile and called by their name, then they're given something interesting to do, but they don't suddenly have a coach when they arrive this week who's in a thoroughly bad mood and everything's horrible and grumpy and all the rest of it. Now my husband is going to groan, but I'm going to tell you a story. When I first started teaching, I had a head of department, head PE teacher. I'd rather really not talk about it, but let's do it. So every morning when I went in, I had no idea how she was going to behave. Was she going to say, hello Anne, how are you? Was she going to ignore me? Was she going to shout at me? What was she going to do? And I tell you, that is the worst thing possible, and many of you will have been in that situation. Imagine what that's like for a kid. They come into the lesson, they want to know what this coach is going to do. They want to know that this is going to be the same coach as they had last week and not some grumpy girls that they... So in other words, behaviour of a coach. Am I making this up? No, I'm observing it myself, and I've done it myself, some of it, okay? But the bottom line is, this is what kids are saying, and that's the important bit. I've already answered my own question. How many of the likes and dislikes of the kids are linked to our coaching behaviour? And the answer is all of them. None of those is about what, when or why. Every single one of their likes and dislikes is about how we behave and what we do. Sorry. Okay. So there's a mismatch between what the kids need and what they receive. The upshot of this is, it's one of the biggest reasons why people drop out. Now, we've already said when they're 10 and under, they actually can't drop out, they don't get a chance. Right? Because the parents are going to keep wanting them to come back. But they're not going to be very happy kids. If you're not a very happy kid, you're not going to make much progress. And tennis is not a sport that you're going to enjoy. I was working with a coach in the States 2 or 3 weeks ago, no, not 2 or 3 weeks ago, 2 or 3 months ago, who said to me, did you know I gave up tennis when I was 10? I said, no. I thought, I didn't even know you when you were 10, so I certainly didn't know whether you gave up tennis when you were 10. He said, I started playing when I was 15. I said, why did you give up? He said, because all we did was stand in a line. And I hit one ball every 10 minutes. I once did a count. A coach was on a coach education course, and he had a line of 7 kids, and he fed them one ball at a time. Well, first of all, I worked out that the coach hit 7 times more balls than the kids did. That was the first thing I worked out. The next thing I worked out was that the coach had hit one ball every 10 seconds, and the kids had actually hit one ball about every 9 minutes. So I didn't get to, so in a lesson of an hour, I probably hit 12 or 15 balls. I mean, that's really good. And in the meantime, the coaches did about 5,000, I think. We need to be very clear. Okay. These are the things that will actually help the participation. Coach on every kid. We've obviously, every child is different, so I keep saying, but I'm trying to deal with this broad age group. Centred on getting confidence and competence. That's my job, to give them confidence, to give them some competence, and those two will go together. And this is a very big one, and we ignore it at our peril. The motivational climate, in other words, whether somebody wants to take part and somebody wants to stay and somebody wants to come back, that's always the measure, do they want to come back, is the responsibility of the coach. You, us, are the people who actually set the scene, who set the how of this lesson. And if in the end, if we're not being motivating, if we're not being interesting, okay, you can hardly blame the kids. If the kids look a bit dead in the water, I think you should get a mirror out and say, do I look dead in the water? Not blame them on something else, blame it all on something else. The motivational climate is very, very clear. In any research and any experience you turn up, the motivation of the coach is the driving force. Should it be with performance players? No. It shouldn't be with performance players. But we're not talking about performance players, we're talking about 10 and under kids. And they're going to rely on you and your enthusiasm and all the rest of it. Okay, child comes first. Right, athletics in. Okay. Just quickly. We talk about coaching as a lesson. What we know now is that there's a lot of other things that go on that are important. And what I'm trying to do now is just to have a look at the 4 different things that actually happen in the lesson, which are about behaviours and all the rest of it. The emphasis that I put as a coach on different tasks, what I think is important. The environment that I create, I just talked about motivation. If I create a negative environment, in other words, everything you do wrong you get picked up for, if you do something wrong you get punished, all those things, as distinct from an environment where the coaches tell me what I could do to get better, etc., etc. The organisation is huge. If we were talking about high performance, and we're not, in a high performance lesson, the organisation and the planning beforehand is absolutely crucial to the success of that session. When we're down with the 10 and unders, it might not be quite so important, but you do actually have to have some organisational skills. And I've seen a lot of coaches with no organisational skills. And the way in which we deal with individuals. Okay, let's have a quick look at those. All right. So, the emphasis I put on different things. Okay, that one we've talked about, we won't worry about this one. The environment is the one I want to talk about. The right environment is about learning and development, about people getting better, and I need to make it fun. The environment includes every player whose name is used frequently, who is talked to quietly as a person by the coach and not as, you are all doing so-and-so. Can you remember back to those days when you were standing in a group around the coach and the coach would say, you're all doing so-and-so, and you're thinking, I'm not. In other words, you all really is not valid. It's about what a player is doing and having a quiet word. Treat them as an individual and develop some rapport and some relationship with each player. If you develop that rapport and relationship, things are going in the right direction. If you don't, well, if you don't know everybody as an individual, you're in trouble. The research on coaching environment is quite important. And this is what the children have said. The coach knows what to do. I would add to that, makes it very clear that he knows what to do and he's going to do it. But can also adapt to the situation. There's not much point in having a lesson plan, for example, that says we're going to do this, this and this. The kids have, and here's the thing, if you teach kids on a Friday night, it's very different from teaching kids on a Saturday morning. Kids on a Saturday morning are fresh, kids on a Friday night, it's the end of the week in school. And, right. So in other words, the situation will change. So my lesson plan often will change on a Friday night, but it's probably going to stick to what it was on a Saturday morning. All right. It emphasises fun and enjoyment. One of the biggest ways of emphasising fun, and everybody talks about fun, is if you enjoy it yourself. If you don't enjoy it yourself, you're not able to actually generate fun for the kids. Individual feedback. Uses question. Here's a big one. Uses questioning, simple questioning to the kids, and listening to the answer. Right? Rather than telling them what to do all the time. And the other one is making absolutely sure that before they go and do it, they understand. One of the things that I think is an indication that you could use is if the kids are confident enough to come and ask you, I didn't really understand, please could you explain again, coach, I think you're on the right track. If they go away and they're not quite sure what they're going to do, but they're not going to have the courage to ask you again, you should be looking in the mirror. The organisation, that they're organised, they're planned, and they become increasingly difficult. There is plenty of variety, right? But there are also favourite games. This doesn't apply to 14 and 15-year-olds, but it does apply to little ones. The thing I haven't put on there, which is also something with 10 and unders, and I'm sure Mike does it a lot, is you give names to games. In other words, they can actually recognise and they can come and say, I'd like to do so-and-so. I'm going to say it again, the players do not wait in lines. If you are a coach where the players are waiting in a line, for heaven's sake, change your behaviour. That is not fun. Well, I'm not going on about it. Right. The focus of the coach is always in and on the lesson. In other words, he's not looking at his cell phone, he's not finding his cell phone, his mobile phone more interesting than anybody else, and he's certainly not talking to everybody. I watched a coach, and I'm going to say it, it was here in Oslo, I watched a coach who started the lesson late, so the kids were sort of drifting about like this. This was a 9-year-old lesson, okay, and then had conversations with that parent, the coach on the next court, dealt with the phone, and finally got on with the lesson. And as soon as the balls were used up, because obviously this was feeding from the net, as soon as the balls were used up, went back to the phone while the kids picked the balls up. Come on. Why would I want to come back? Nobody was interested in me. The way in which the coaches treat individuals, in a sense we've used all that, and the simple and relevant questions at the end of it. I think we spend, certainly the 10 and under kids, we spend a lot of time thinking they can't work things out, and they can. Here's the next one, and it's very quick, because I've got 4 minutes. 4 minutes, boss? Is that all right? I promised Ashrat it will be 11:30, it's going to be 11:30, something like that. All right. The next question is, we've had our basic coach education. How do we get better? Because in my experience, and I'm as guilty of writing coach education programs as lots of other people, it shouldn't be the be and all, end all, and be all and end all. It basically is the beginning. And other things have to happen. Now, what we also know now is the way in which coaches get better who are dealing with 10 and under kids are slightly different than they are if they're working with performance players or if they're working with 11 to 17-year-olds. Let's have a look at how we get better if we're working with... oh no, I won't do that. Okay, all right. So, ignore the did you get. Okay. We need always to increase the knowledge we have of the development processes of kids. How many people in this room, and you don't have to put your hand up, how many people in this room would not know the contents of that very first slide I put up that had the children down this side? Okay, that's a question you need to ask yourself. If you don't know what are the things that are developmental needs of children under 10 or 11, then we've got a gap in the knowledge. We're flying a little bit by the seat of our pants, as it were. We need to know. So that's the first thing I would do as soon as I left a coach education course. Because in my experience, coach education courses don't do this. They don't have time, to be honest. But you need to know. You need to know where in the development process this age group is, but you also need to have some thoughts as to where in the development process of this age group different children are. Precisely the job I was doing, idly, but doing it, watching, what was it called? Bandy, thank you, right. Watching Bandy last night and realising that those smaller kids weren't yet ready to do what the older kids were doing. Now, I was fascinated by the coach because, of course, he was freezing cold. I don't know how you coach in freezing cold conditions, any more than I know how you coach rowing. You've got in rowing, you've got them all stuck out on a river. I don't know how you coach them. I actually don't know how you coach swimmers either, because they're underwater most of the time. Ours is a bit of an easy job. Okay, but I need to know what they can do at different stages. And here's how you can do it. You can observe other coaches, and here's the important bit, decide what you like and dislike. And then ask the next question. Well, I don't like what he's doing, but am I doing that? Because if I'm doing that, then that's not so good either. In my experience, all of us are very bad at evaluating our own performance. My job as soon as I get off here is to go and talk to Roy and say, okay, what could I have done better? What did I do reasonably well? What did I miss out? And so on. In other words, as soon as I finished a coaching lesson, do I jump in the car? No, I don't actually. I know what everybody does. They pick up their cell phone, they answer, right? But what you should be doing is saying, okay, that's what we tried to do, how far did we achieve it? We need to actually think about honest evaluation. Any coach ed courses now, what we run in the PTR, certainly Master of Tennis level, there is a huge section about the ability of coaches to self-evaluate their own performance and then to modify their performance. That's not about what, when and why, that's about how. Okay? And the how is the crucial bit. Learning from quality coaches, obviously for coach education courses, and a lot of it is about developing our own skills. I mean, some of us are